Do it. There we go. And then, so I'll just kind of tee it up, kick it off, and then I'll allow you to introduce yourself, give a little background, what have you. And then, yeah, I've got obviously walking us through the success plan, but talking about your advocating process, I'll call it, the move from education to CS, the impact it's had on your customers, and then sort of how we can leverage that for your learning, your customer education use case, and what are those outcomes that you look to try to discover for your customers, et cetera. And then anything else that comes to mind. And I have no idea how long of a conversation this will be or anything else. Like I said, super fluid, super casual. So,
Sure.
All right, sound good?
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome. Here we go. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Success Coaching in the Wild. This time we have the opportunity to speak with Nergis Tepeli from Northpass. Nergis has an amazing story that she's going to walk us through, as well as being willing and able to show us the success plan that she has just been able to actually get rolled out there at Northpass. So Nergis, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. It's great to be here. I was actually, just a little background about me. I was an educator for about 8 years. I've taught in charter schools, public schools. I've even helped principals manage schools as well. And just last year, I decided that I wanted to take a leap of faith and go into customer success. And I was able to land a job at Northpass. In a very quick amount of time, believe it or not, in a matter of 6 weeks, I was able to land that job after doing extensive research, of course. And at Northpass, we're basically a learning management system. So a lot of my skills have been able to correlate, and I've been able to use it in Northpass. So
yeah, that's amazing. Well, congratulations, first off, in making that transition from education into customer success management. Before we fired up the recording here, we were talking about the amount of activity that you see on LinkedIn right now for teachers looking to move into CS. Do you have any idea why it seems like maybe it's just more visible and this isn't a new kind of phenomenon, or is there maybe a push for teachers who want to get into tech? Why is that right now, do you think?
I think that educators are starting to see their real true value and their skill set and how valuable it is. And using that information, they're deciding that there might be more out there for them and, just more of an opportunity. And I think that's essentially what happened with me and a lot of my teacher friends, where we're starting to realize that, it's bigger than the little bubble that we were living in. And we can use those skills and really help outcomes within businesses as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think there's a ton of applicable experience. There's a group of teachers on LinkedIn, and she actually moved into marketing, and her name's escaping me right now, but I'll put a link whenever we post this thing or whatever. I'll put a link to that, and it's like this community group of teachers and educators who are looking to try to get into SaaS, whether it be in customer success or marketing. And I was lucky enough to speak with them about 6 months ago and did a webinar where I tried to do that kind of translation of the faculty. Your faculty are your colleagues. The administrators are your leadership team. The students are your end users, and try to kind of, like the parents of the students are like your executive stakeholder who's going to decide, do I keep my kid in your class or not? There really is a lot of applicable experience in that background, but I think at the surface level, people maybe don't necessarily see that. You obviously did, because you were able to make the change in 6 weeks, you said, right?
Yes, I was. I'll never forget. It was right before, it was around Christmas time when I decided I'm like ready for a change. And I started really applying in January, and February I got my offer. I believe it was the second week of February that I got my offer. But I think one of the things that like just in general as like feedback and advice on that, I mean, I know it doesn't always work out 6 weeks for people when they're transitioning, but one of the things that I did was, just like you said, I looked at all the things that I've done as an educator, and then I decided how would that impact a business. So it was more than just, lesson plans or things that we do. It was like I analyze data every single day. as an educator, right? So how do I do it as a customer success manager? You have to be able to show your customers how you analyze the data. How is this, this company that you actually spent money on, how are we going to help you? Let me show you the data. So a lot of that was just like correlating between what I do and what I can do for the business.
Absolutely. Well, you must have done a heck of a job to be able to make that move. And congratulations, you're about a week out from your 1 year anniversary in this new
Actually,
world, huh?
I'm not, to be honest with you. And all educators will tell you this, but there is a clause on our contract that states that we do have to stay for 60 days out. So I did have to fulfill that, but Northpass is super amazing, and they actually decided to wait for me. So my first day was in April, so I'm not there just yet.
Oh, okay. So you're getting there. You're getting there. Well, it says 11 months. Yeah, it's got April, but LinkedIn math, it says 11 months on there for some reason. So speaking of Northpass, let's talk about that and kind of educate the audience on what the value proposition is. Who are your customers? What are some of those outcomes and challenges that you help them solve with your product and services? Uh-oh. Well, speaking of Northpass, by the way, maybe you can give us a little background on the product and who your customers are, and maybe what are some of the challenges or outcomes that they look to achieve with your products and services over there.
Sure. So Northpass is actually an LMS, and we offer a platform for our customers to create academies and courses within our program. And basically, we integrate with so many CRMs like HubSpot and other tools as well. And our customers, they want to empower their customers to drive product adoption, customer retention, and fewer support tickets ultimately. And what my job is as the customer success manager for Northpass is to empower my customers to be able to utilize Northpass efficiently, and also ultimately show them what what they're capable of doing with their customers, and looking at that data to really understand what they're getting out of using Northpass and creating these dream academies. Our customers create some of the best academies I've seen. We're very customizable and customer centric, so yeah, it's been really successful. I know you mentioned challenges as well. Kind of leading into like the success plan in itself. Seeing one of the challenges might be just like as any customer success manager, sometimes when you have new customers during the implementation process, things get lost within, from the sales process to coming into, the customer success manager taking on that role and ensuring customer success. So, we did start implementing the success plan, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about how that has empowered our customers even more.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because you had mentioned having to really advocate. So before we jump in and take a look at your version of the success plan, which is what this success coaching in the wild is all about, and for me, selfishly, I just love to see what we teach out in the real world. But before we get there, there's change management involved, right? This is a new thing. Why do I need to do this new thing? We've been doing it the old way forever, and it seems to work just fine. We never needed this success plan thing before. How did you go about that? You talked about advocating to really, get this into the business. What were some of the hurdles you had to overcome, and how did you do that?
Sure. So I wanted to start small. So what I did was I contacted one of our sales team members, and I said, let's start with this first customer together. So we sat down together and we looked at the customer success plan together. And I was like, can you fill this out for me? And can we talk through this? And so, he was able to, he had these amazing notes that he has just for himself. And taking those notes, he was able to fill out the entire customer success plan template.
Wow.
And based on that, I learned so much. So I was like, look, this is something we definitely need to do. And he was on board too. It was only one member, but he was like, I see the value in it already. So from there, I went into and spoke with our VP of sales as well. And I said, look, I did try this with Mike and it went really well. And I think this is going to be really successful. And I gave some of the points on why it's going to be successful. Like, for example, our sales team, they have some amazing notes and they have some amazing ideas and things that they've learned throughout the sales cycle. I want to know that. So because I want to know what's important to our customers, what impact can I have as I first come in and introduce myself. So just based on that conversation, I was able to advocate for it and speak to other team members, and the VP of sales and everyone within our organization super they're really on top of making sure that we're successful. So everyone was on board after that.
So help me understand, me and my whiteboard, I always love my whiteboard, gonna pull out the whiteboard. So when we're looking at the customer life cycle and moving from the top of the funnel to the bottom, right? They get to this decision point to become a customer. Then we move into onboarding, implementation, all the operational stuff. So where we advise companies, and where some companies have rolled this out, actually, the success plan motion, I'll call it, is actually pre-sale at late stage, 75 to 90% probability to close. Companies like Penske Trucks and a few others have actually rolled out a position called the Success Planner. And that's what they do. They work with customer success and sales, and they really do this planning motion up here in conjunction with sales. Is that where it begins with you, or was it here, but you're working with the Mike, I think you said his name was, to kind of start it? Where in the life cycle at Northpass do you introduce the success plan to the customer in their journey?
Well, internally, they start as soon as they're starting to talk to a potential customer. So for sales teams now, they've used this tool as a way to start inputting their information and seeing if this is a right fit on both ends as well. So I would say, begins at the top of that funnel, or maybe like 70% in, right before that decision is made, because ultimately what happens is once that decision is made and the contract is signed, the sales representative or AE will give us that success plan and will share it with us before we even meet with the customer. So we're able to get an understanding of what the customer needs and what their success plan looks like.
And so you're coming into the kickoff, getting to know you call with the customer who's just signed on to be a customer. They're just brand new. And you've already got a list of outcomes and some level of desired experience. You've already got this basically.
Exactly.
At least 80% of the way there. That's phenomenal. And that's how it's supposed to work. Like, why doesn't every company do it this way? I don't know, because it removes so much friction for that onboarding stage that is just so critical, and oftentimes has so much friction for the customer. If we can have something travel with them from top to bottom, and then through renewal and expansion and all of those kind of steps along the way. For anybody who's watching that's unfamiliar with our success plan, let me close a tab because there is no way to make LinkedIn not chatty. If you're unfamiliar with the Success Plan Canvas, we have it for free. It's available on successcoaching.co. Under the resources dropdown, you'll get an example, you'll get instruction manual on how to use it. There's even a case study out there for one of our customers, but better than case studies is like having conversations like this and getting to see it. So Nergis, without further ado, if you don't mind, I would love to take a look at what the success plan looks like at Northpass and kind of talk through what you changed and why, and really understand how you made it your own.
Sure, absolutely. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So many of you are familiar with the one that Aaron, that you just mentioned, that's available, the free template. And it is actually a great way to begin, especially when you're thinking about the success plan. We've added a few of our thoughts into it as well. But essentially the second slide is where we really got creative and thought about things that we need as an organization and what's important to us, right? Just looking at this, the first page, as you could see, everything is pretty much similar. The only thing that we did add was time zones, because we have customers from all around the world. We're talking about Australia, London, New Zealand, you name it, we have it. So we wanted to make sure that we know their time zones, especially when we're thinking about our cadence calls after the kickoff call. So want to have that, instead of me asking the customer, where are you based out of? I can be like, I know you're in Paris, let's schedule this call at, the most appropriate time for you. Um, I'm going to move forward because this is the basic one that everyone is familiar with, and I'm going to go on to that second slide.
Yeah.
So this is actually something that we thought about, not just customer success managers, but with the sales team. So after that initial conversation with our VP of sales, who's super supportive and said, let's do it, gave us the green light, I actually ended up having a call with our entire sales team and sat with them and just talked about this and said, look, what else can we add? Like you know this better than we do. You know what you've asked, what notes you have. So can you help me understand what questions that I should be asking? So we actually came up with this all together as a team. So it's not like it's something that I did by myself. Want to give credit to Northpass sales team for sure. Yeah, they're awesome, amazing team. So basically, I want to know as a customer success manager, the first thing, I want to know the company overview, their size, their use case, their main point of contacts, and any other important details that I should know before I walk into that kickoff call. So I know my customer and I want them to be reassured that I've spoken with our sales team as well. And then next bullet, we talk about what are their top 3 priorities. Meaning, like, what are they really looking for? What's the purpose of them? Why did they initially buy Northpass? What was the purpose of it? Do they want to reduce those support tickets? Do they want to go ahead and increase product adoption? What are their main priorities, as they're thinking forward? And then, of course, it can be general goals as well, or hard like KPIs, ROI, like anything like that. So it really depends on the customer and what they're looking for. Our next main important question is, what's their timeline? Are they firm? They're flexible? For example, I'll give you an example. I had a customer who actually had a really firm launch date because they have a product coming out and they want to go ahead and be able to showcase it to their customers. So we had a date of February 1st, it has to be launched. And we were like, okay, we're on it. So we were able to go ahead and launch in that time frame. Now, if I hadn't asked this question and this was not part of our customer success plan, I might have to get into maybe meeting 1 or 2 to figure out that there's a product that's being launched in the next 45 days. So this gave me the advantage of knowing what I need to do before I even started talking to that customer.
Awesome.
And then, what portion of the implementation do we have to be the most creative? And that's a question that's, you sometimes there might be things within your product that we might not be able to implement fully, but we want to know where we can actually be successful in and what we can do to make sure our customers are successful and they're happy. At Northpass, that's our number 1 goal. We want to make sure that they are, we empower our customers and that they're successful moving forward as well. So this is definitely a question we ask internally and with our customers as well. And then, of course, what were some of the risks during the sales? Does the risk still exist? Of course, we want to know that question as well. We want to make sure that those risks don't exist anymore because we want to retain our customers. As you know, right now, that's the main goal. Just in general, we want to retain as many customers and reduce churn as much as possible, right? So definitely want to know what are our risks and how can we help eliminate those risks as well.
Totally.
And then last but not least, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that will make our partnership stronger? What can I do immediately to make sure my customer is happy? What can I do, whether it means that I need to integrate with Zoom, HubSpot? I mean, we do integrate with so many different platforms as well. So what can I do immediately to make sure my customer is successful?
Oh, go ahead.
That's it. That's all I have. That's our list.
No, I think it's great. Let's leave this up for a second so we can kind of dissect. And I do want to go back to the first slide as well and kind of point out some things that I noticed that were different from ours. But the low-hanging fruit, I think, is so important. We talk oftentimes in onboarding that we want to try to make the customer successful early and often, right? To try to create some acceleration of adoption of the product. And to do that, it's got to be easy stuff. It's not going to be the big, huge business milestone that has the big ROI and all of that. That might take the whole contract to get from point A to point B. But what are those low-hanging pieces of fruit that we can nab early start to show progress, to start to deliver value as soon as possible? I think that's a really good question to have. And I think it's something that, frankly, we may want to add into ours, is that concept, because it's, we tied directly to time to value, or TTV, and that metric as well. A couple other things, retaining customers, reducing churn. Yeah, that's always important, but it's, I think, never been more important than it is right now in an economic downturn. All of a sudden, keeping your customers and the revenue that you've got becomes that much more mission critical. Whereas in a bear market, or no, a bull market, excuse me, we might be a little more new logo acquisition, new customer acquisition focused. Whereas in a bear market, we're looking at, battening down the hatches. And so it just becomes that much more important as well. Let's talk about predictability of, well, actually, let's go back up to slide 1, and then I'm going to come back to that. Predictability. So we've got learning objectives and then impact opportunities. Can you help me understand what the difference is of those two?
Sure. So when we're thinking about like the learning objectives, we're ultimately thinking about, I mean, we are LMS, we're thinking about like their objectives, what type of learning that they want to actually implement, maybe, when it comes to courses, what type of courses, etc. And then the impact opportunities, how are those learning opportunities or learning objectives impacting their business goals ultimately? So, going back to some of the points that I made, as far as, for example, they want to reduce those support tickets, and they want to take that burden off of their customer success managers and make things a little bit more streamlined. So thinking of that, our sales team does a wonderful job of really adding these points in, because they learn that throughout the sales cycle. So then we get that information from them.
Yeah, and you're building it with sales and with the customer, kind of in like a triangular fashion. You start with the sales team and make sure that everything they learned in the sales cycle is on here, so that it's transitioned over to onboarding in the CSM. Then you take this to the customer, and it's like validation, right? Like, this is what I understand you're looking to achieve. Here's the learning objectives that I believe you have. Anything to change or add to that, as opposed to coming to the kickoff call like I did early in my customer success career and asking the customer, why did you choose us instead of our competition? Let's start there. What is it? And the person on the phone was like, I just went through a 90-day sales cycle with your sales team, and you don't know why I bought your product. Like, they wanted to quit. Understandably so, right? Because I was there like doing discovery of objectives as opposed to validation, because just like us, our customers don't want to repeat themselves either, right? And if we show disconnect, and so the success plan is certainly helping with that, it sounds like. I love the approach. And then the kind of what's in it for me with the sales team, and showing them that if we do this, it's going to make your life easier.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And one thing I will add to what you're saying is, with the sales team, I think the buy-in there is the fact that I don't have to Slack you or contact you and have an internal meeting with you, because if you've added everything you needed to here, we have done our jobs, and you can now move over to your next sales conversation, and I can take over this account without any issues.
Yeah, and you save time on those check-in calls and check-up emails and whatnot. Absolutely. We had a client who estimated 2 hours a week per CSM was saved in check-ins, checkups, phone calls, emails, Slack, all that, because they had it in one place where everybody could go find it. And you can see what's coming next. You got your milestones and your dates and your key actions right there. Speaking of where do you go find it, where do you keep this? Is it kept in a Google slide somewhere? And how do you access it if you're at Northpass?
Sure, yeah, it's located in our drives. Basically, once the sales team members, they complete it, they do share it with us. We do have a 15-minute conversation before we even have a kickoff call. So we do have an implementation manager as well. So myself, the customer success manager, and the account executive will join, and they will typically share this with us. in a conversation, just in case if we have any questions. So it's not just like they share it with us and then we read it and then we're like, wait, what? It's more of like, okay, let's talk about what I just did with our customer. And do you have any questions for me? So we make sure that we all are aligned before we have that first kickoff call. Going back to your point, I don't want to ask my customer, hey, why did you choose Northpass? I want to be like, hey, I know all about why you chose Northpass. Welcome. I cannot wait to make you successful. So that's the way I want to start.
I love it. And then let's jump back to the second slide momentarily. Just because I want to come back in here. There's a couple things that came up. Yes, KPIs. All right. So we have KPIs. For anybody who doesn't know what that stands for, what's that stand for, Nergis?
That's a great question. What does that stand for?
Key performance indicators.
Yes,
So, you know, numbers. That's basically it. What are we going to use to measure so that you don't have any doubt the value that you're getting with your relationship with Northpass? That's the whole goal here. And we want, the whole point of doing success planning is to be able to predict renewal. And when we live in the subscription economy, renewal becomes really vital. When I don't sell a physical product, but I sell it as a service, typically I get a little bit of money over time instead of a whole bunch of money up front. So renewal is critical. And to be able to predict that is critical when you're taking on that kind of financial risk that these business models take on. How have you seen this be effective at renewal prediction or getting out ahead of churn risk, possibly, because you're identifying you either did or you did not hit my KPIs or my ROI, which return on investment, if anybody's not familiar with that one as well. But can you kind of tell us what you've seen in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for us, especially, as just a customer success manager, one of the ways that we indicate it is when we do have these meetings, we analyze the data. Going back to, data being super important. So seeing the usage, the number of people that are going through the courses, the number of people that are essentially creating courses, the administrators that are within Northpass. And then what we would do is use that data to show like what's percentage of people have not come into your support team, have not, bombarded your support team with questions rather than as opposed to going into the course itself and reviewing it as well. So I think that for us, it's very important, and this is something that we actually review with our customers all the time. I always like to start conversations with, like, for example, especially 6 months in, when I see what the average score, how many users have been going in, activating. Now let's talk about numbers. Let's talk about how has this helped your team? Have you seen a reduction in support tickets? Have you seen more of a product adoption? So really using those numbers to your benefit.
And so what do you do there for, let's talk about that value proposition of support ticket deflection. How do you know how many support tickets you've deflected? Because that seems like it would be a hard thing to quantify, possibly.
That's a great question. So I personally would not know that, but our customers, who usually our customers are like, for example, head of customer success, or, someone in a position like that where they'll be able to say, we've actually seen these numbers go down. I actually recently had a customer who was really excited about doing a case study for us, because they're like, look, our support tickets have gone down drastically. So it's indicated with customers as well. They're seeing it. They're seeing those, numbers, and they're realizing the correlation between these numbers and what's happening internally as well.
Yeah, so that you can then later look back and say, you used to have 100 support tickets a day. Now you implemented Northpass. Now you've got 75. And so now we have a quantifiable metric or KPI that we can use to show, because again, and then that's what leads to that predictable renewal, right? Like, exactly. If I know I'm getting the value, if I know I'm achieving my definition of success, right? What I want to achieve, and I'm getting it how I want it, then as long as I know it, and I always talk about these 3 Ds, but that's demonstration of the value. It's the third D. And people always think that that has to be a QBR, because that's typically where we've done that. Like, let's show you the value you're getting once a quarter. And what we're looking to do is really make sure you understand the outcomes you're achieving. But when we drag a customer into a QBR and it's poorly delivered, we can actually add friction to the experience, thus degrading the overall volume of success, when all we were trying to do was that last D there, that demonstration. You're able to do it in the success plan. You're able to use this document, which it's a living, breathing document at Northpass, right? Like, you're always updating it and iterating on it. And so over time, I should be able to look and see support ticket deflection, check, went down by X%, check. And I told your sales team that I wanted it to decrease by, whatever percentage, and you either have or have not made it decrease by that percentage. So if you have, that's when the renewal just becomes that like natural byproduct of the life cycle. It's not this big like save account, save play stuff, because I know I'm getting my definition. And you guys are doing that right now at Northpass in the SuccessPLAN Canvas, which I absolutely love to see. Anybody who's familiar with me knows my take on business reviews, QBRs specifically, and how I just kind of think they're stupid. And this is a way around them. People are always like, well, if they're stupid, what else are we going to do? How else could we possibly demonstrate that they're getting the value that they want? And you just answered, you gave me another bullet in my gun, if you will, for those fights of how to demonstrate. What are some other impacts that you've seen on your customers since successfully rolling this out?
Well, before I answer that question, one thing I do want to say as a customer success manager that I've learned that is super important is never ever go into like a meeting without having some sort of value. So just going back to that conversation, it's like, yes, you can always demonstrate on every single call, believe it or not. There's always a way to show the value of what you're bringing to the table. So I think it's super important to like note that you might not have to have those, quarterly check-ins, if you will. You can technically have them on your monthly calls or your bi-weekly by showing, look at the data, have you seen an impact? What's happening with you? And it can be this really great conversation where customers, they see the value of it then. So it's not like you're demonstrating, they're seeing it on their own. So I think that's super important to add as well.
That's a good point. And another thing, being an individual contributor, I am asked this a lot in class. Well, I'm just one CSM. How can I possibly I think the success plan is great and I want to use it with my customers, but how can I possibly make change in my organization when I'm not a leader? You did it. How did you do that, Nergis? How did you make change internally as an individual contributor? Because you couldn't make anybody do anything. And yet you were able to persuade them. What did you do?
I think it's just a matter of just starting small. So like I didn't go in with this big hope, like let's do this together. It was more like, let me do a little like sample of this. Let me start small with just this one customer and this one sales associate, like team member, and let's see what the success is here. Once you're able to demonstrate it, and I mean, I will say I have some amazing customers who are just super willing, and we just have such great relationships that it comes really naturally too. But once I was able to start small, then everyone gets to see the impact. So you have to think of it this way. You can't go in saying this is the way it needs to be, because not everyone's going to see your view. But if you go in small and you show that impact, then you're able to influence others. And I do have such great like supportive leaders at Northpass. So honestly, whenever I do come up with ideas or I bring anything to the table, it's always supported. So that does really help as well. But I think it's really important to start small and show small little impacts.
Yeah, I think so. I wrote down some steps, and maybe we can use this to kind of tie up the conversation. We'll say, Nergis's best practice for success plan implementation. Start small, do a proof of concept with one customer, and make sure that you partner with a salesperson who takes copious notes. It sounds like Mike took a lot of really good notes, right?
He did. He did.
Anything else to add to that kind of best practices of how to roll this thing out in the real world before we wrap it up?
Yes, one more thing. I think it's super important that there are so many different types of learners, and this kind of goes back to our LMS, but really being able to demonstrate to your sales team what it looks like. Because a lot of times you can show this template, right, where it's just this empty template, and they're like, what do you want me to do with this? So why don't you actually show them by, and this is my teaching background. Whenever I would have a project, I would always show them what I would like it to look like, or show them different samples of it so that they get an idea of what the expectation is. So I would say the last thing is definitely to be able to show your sales team a sample of it, of what you might want it to look like, so that they can get an idea.
Unbelievable. Well, thank you once again so much for coming and sharing the insights and the experience and everything from your educational or your career transition from education to CS, and then the advocacy to roll out the Success Plan Canvas, and then walking us through the success coaching in the wild. This has been an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough for being a part of it.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks so much.
Take care. Thanks a lot, Nergis.